Thank you, Ashish. So I'll just start with sharing my screen. So with respect to the first question of what is the main pathway of transition and our role in it, I'll just share this small little story from this little village called Bandali, which is in Chamarajanagar district. Chamarajanagar itself is one of the most neglected districts of Karnataka. And in fact, there is a belief that if any chief minister steps into the territory of Chamarajanagar, he will resign. And that belief holds so strong that none of our chief ministers set foot in this district. So in this kind of a district, this is just a small example. Two power plants, solar power parks have come up in this little village, which has about 9,000 people. And the solar power parks are about 130 acres and 105 acres. And this has come in an eco-sensitive zone of the Kaveri Wildlife Sanctuary, which is also very close to the Bandipur National Park. It is tiger territory. And these parks have come up without obtaining there hasn't been proper mechanism, because we all know that the MOEF thought that solar power parks don't cause any harm. So they didn't need any environmental clearance or EIAs or anything like that. But still, if it is in an eco-sensitive zone, there has to be a committee and further discussion and all that. But none of that happened. And the power producers managed to get no objection certificates both from the Panchayat and the Forest Department. And it is a very rich red loamy soil region where they grow a lot of paddy, fruits, ragi, and a variety of vegetables also. And in contrast to the Pavagada Solar Park, which I spoke about in the last energy conference, where the land was leased, here the land has been bought directly from the farmers. And even the village commons have been taken up. So what does this mean? In the context of the village did not have electricity earlier, but today the electricity that is generated is connected to the grid. And from that, they have lighting purposes. For all lighting purpose, there is electricity, but then restricted to pumping water up all their bore wells and other wells. So for agriculture, they have to get up early in the morning at odd hours and run to the field and switch on their pump and get water out. And the local community, which has lost land to this power project, did not have any kind of bandwidth to negotiate a good deal, because they were literally threatened into parting with their land. The power developers came and told them that if you don't part with your land at the price that we are giving now, tomorrow the government will take it away at a lower price, so you might as well give it to us. So they were threatened and coerced and lured into it, also saying that you all will get a job. Of course, none of them have been given a job. And it has completely destroyed access to all the grazing pastures. The pathways are all gone. Today, they have to walk long distances, and many of the livestock rearers are beginning to sell their livestock because it's not feasible for them. And so these families, although the number of families in this particular case may be very small, they have slipped in, they're all small and marginal farmers, they've slipped into a kind of deep poverty where they don't have food at home. They don't have access to all those little agricultural residues which form some kind of fuel at the household level. And food security is completely gone because they have to buy today and they don't have money to buy. And if you go to the parks itself, this is slowly moving into, in the context of gender, everybody employed in the park are men. With this slide, I'll close and then we can take the rest of it later. So what is its impact on women? Because in the context of gender, women in this village did not know what was happening. Most of the brokers who came to buy the land, they hung out near the bars of the village. They lured the men out there, and the men came and parted with the land. They did not even consult with the women. There was no community level meeting or discussion. And in many cases, the documents have been fudged and forged. And these men, after selling the land, have probably even finished using up that money, and they are outside looking for jobs everywhere across, even beyond Chamarajanagar. And that has left the women in the house with, bearing the brunt of this whole managing the household, managing water, managing energy, taking care of children, taking care of the elderly, practically doing everything. And this in a condition where women are not recognized as farmers, so they don't have access to any other provisions that there might be in the many programs and schemes, and they have very limited access to loans and credits, and they're completely dependent on those little monies that they can manage from the SHGs. Then, like I said, in the solar parks, it's only the men who hire. So when I was talking to some of the women said all these things happen only for the men. There is nothing that comes for the women. There are no skill building in the context of these kind of transitions we are talking about. You go across India, most of the programs that are being given in the context of skill building to women is about beauty parlor training, then sewing, teaching, everything again, gender stereotyped kind of training that is happening. Very few instances of where they are learning carpentry or being trained to be an electrician or plumber or driver or anything like that. Then some of the men who were working in the solar park, when we were talking to them, we asked them how many people even did the course with you. They've all done ITI diploma courses, and they said,
Bhargavi, I think you'll have to wind up,
yeah, I'll
please.
just close. So there is no scope for women in those things because there is no guarantee that they will get a job. And in this context, also there is safety and security is a big issue with fragmentation of land, where we have made women more vulnerable. And in this context, I think a focus on what is happening to women in such a transition is important. We'll come back to it more later. So there has been a whole lot of interventions in the context of alternate energy, where we brought in the smokeless chulas and solar lamps and fans and many other things. So with respect to the smokeless chulas and the LPG cylinders, we all know what happened. Beyond the first cylinder, people did not have the resources to buy the second cylinder. So it is mostly lying outside, more like a storage space in many of the villages across India. The smokeless chulas, in some villages, there was participation of women to kind of design it, but across it was largely intervention. So it was just distributed, and later on they studied the usage and impacts and so on and so forth. So in many cases, women are not using the chulas because it is not suitable for their large vessels or the kind of cooking they are doing. And in many cases, they have complained saying that why are you, relegating us to this whole thing of again dealing with cow dung and mud and agri residues and all that. Why can't we have something like all of y'all use in the cities? So in that context, if you see what is happening in the rural area, even where alternate energy has made its way, it is the men who control, because men have this whole big bargaining power within the household. There are power relationships and it's a patriarchal situation. So they control the household finances. So for them, repairing a smokeless chula or getting a second cylinder is not a priority. Probably getting a better mobile phone is a priority for them. So what happens? Women continue to bear that burden of dealing with this challenge. And improved quality of life is never a priority. So if you just go across some of the villages where this alternate energy or even energy has made its way, the three bulbs and one fan will be in the hall and the room where the men are sitting, not in the kitchen. Out of the three lights, one light can go into the kitchen, but nobody would have thought of it. And the women don't have the voice to demand. We were at one of the SHG group interviews trying to understand what is happening in a particular village, and we understood that the women eat after the men. So even in terms of the meat pieces, only if the meat pieces are left, they get to eat. So protein intake for women is so little, while she spends so much energy working so much, a really lot. So this is a very interesting survey done by the National Sample Survey, where it shows the amount of time spent by men and women across India. And if you just see both rural women and urban women spend about 16 to 17 hours just doing domestic work. And in such a context, we have not thought of innovative ways to ease this, make that time available for herself to take care of her health, to take care of her, give her some leisure, enable her to learn many, many things. So today, many of us, we probably complain that, somebody doesn't know how to use a WhatsApp, or we are pushing people in the village to feed into their tabs, to upload some data for some project related work. And it takes a long time for them to even learn that. Are we making time for that while she has to deal with so much housework? So that is something that we need to keep in mind. Moving on, I have another 4 very interesting slides. We are talking about gender in transition. If we just look at women's representation at the policy level, I went through each of these policies word to word, I read them. And if you do a word search in each of them, you will find the word women. Forget about gender, anything else, girl, children, adults and girl, none of that. Just the word woman or women. It was only in 2 policies I found this. One was the National Rural Electrification Policy of 2006 and the National Draft Energy Policy, in which the word women has been mentioned 3 times. And in the first one, the National Electricity Policy, it recognizes that women spend a lot of time, so we need to provide energy for them. And in the second one, this is the National Draft Energy Policy of 2017. In this, the word women is relegated to a box item. And in the box, it is about clean cooking access. Whereas the policy itself has 15 chapters, and nowhere will you read or understand if there is anything favoring gender or women related issues. Look at the Ministry of Energy. Just look at all those names out there, starting from the Honorable Minister of State, the additional secretaries, joint secretaries, it's all filled with men. Then the Central Electricity Authority. Look at the authority. The authority has 5 men. And the word women appears a few times, yes, but in what context? One is in the context of the sexual harassment policy, the setting up of the internal complaints committee. And second one in the context of their extracurricular activities, where I have highlighted in the slide, where it says women have been co-opted as members of the CEA Departmental Canteen Management Committee. Why women can't do anything else other than managing a canteen? So here again, we are stereotyping gender roles. And this is very, very disturbing. So if we have not made changes here, if we have not transited, then where else? And we are talking about a just transition. And look at this, the Central Energy Regulatory Commission. If you go through their annual report and see their organization chart, look at each name. I don't have anything more to say with that. Then go through the Solar Energy Corporation of India, go through their annual report, the latest 1819 annual report. If you go through, they have 73 men and only 14 women employees. And then they have requested the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy to appoint the women director as per the Company Act of 2013, and it is still pending. Then coming to my own state, the Karnataka Renewable Energy Department, it has the ratio of directors is 1:8. And in fact, Shika has left, she's no longer there, so I'm sure that post is pending. And even here under the CSR, it is so stereotypical of what money was given to whom. And they say they gave sewing machines to women, again telling women what they should be doing. Then the corporate sector, we don't have to discuss much. We all know what's happening in the corporate sector. There are very few women who lead the corporate sector. And the work sites have been really very unfair. There are stories after stories that we begin to hear. And what is very important in the corporate sector is you're not supposed to collectivize. You cannot even have a email group of all women of even if you want to discuss your own health related concerns or your access to the restrooms or anything with respect to that, you cannot have even a Google group within the corporate entities. So this lack of unionizing makes it very challenging for women to raise their voice, express their views. And just for an example, I have put this Adani report here where you can see the number. It is 5,601 employees, of which only 375 are women. So maybe I'll stop there and we could take more further.